I came back from a trip expecting the usual keys, my room, my peace. Instead, I found my entire life tossed across the front lawn like broken furniture at a foreclosure sale. The clothes, the photos, even my mattress, all thrown out. And not a single person opened the door when I knocked. The taxi pulled away before I even noticed the cardboard box sitting on the edge of the lawn. It wasn't until I stepped out, dragging my rolling suitcase behind me, that I saw the other piles, trash bags half ripped open, a broken lamp I bought in college, my comforter covered in dirt. My name was written on a soggy moving box in black marker, the letters bleeding from last night's rain. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone else was moving out. Maybe it was old junk someone dumped here. Then I saw the navy duffel bag, the one with the torn handle and a tiny keychain I hadn't touched in years. It was mine. All of it was mine. I left for a work training seminar 8 days ago. I told them. I reminded them. I left my rent payment on the kitchen counter under a magnet, like always. There were no fights before I left. No tension, nothing weird. Just the usual. Dishes in the sink, passive-aggressive post-its on the fridge. Normal roommate life. I walked up the path, heart racing, and tried the front door. Locked. I knocked once. Then twice. I pressed my ear to the wood. Inside, I could hear footsteps. Light ones. Someone was home. I knocked harder. Hello. No answer. Then I saw it. A flicker at the top right window. The curtain shifted, just for a second. Someone had looked down, seen me, and moved away. They were watching me knock on my own door. There was no note. No explanation. Not even a text. Just my life, discarded like trash. I should have yelled. I should have screamed or demanded to know what the hell was going on. But I didn't. My body went still. Not frozen from shock, just heavy like I was sinking into the ground. The air smelled like wet cardboard. I stared down at a pair of sneakers I bought on clearance last winter. One of them was missing a shoelace. I didn't say a word. I turned around, dragged my suitcase over the edge of the lawn, and walked back to my car. There was only one place left to go. The one place they never knew about. The one I never told anyone existed. The drive took 3 hours, and I didn't play music once. Just the hum of the road beneath the tires, the occasional groan of the engine when I accelerated past a truck, and the sound of my thoughts refusing to settle. The cabin sat tucked behind a gravel curve, shielded by a cluster of pines. You wouldn't even notice it unless you were looking for it. No mailbox, no porch light, just weathered siding, a rusted roof, and windows that always seemed to reflect more than they revealed. My uncle left it to me after he passed, cancer, quiet and fast. He didn't have much, but he gave me this. I never told anyone. Not my roommates. Not my ex. Not even my best friend. It was my safety valve. My just in case. Today was that case. I parked beneath the skeletal frame of an old carport and stepped out into silence. Not the kind of silence you hear in neighborhoods at night. The real kind. The kind where even your breath feels loud. No traffic. No footsteps. Just wind through trees and the creak of my trunk opening. The key slid into the door like it had been waiting. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and dust. Nothing had moved since I last visited 2 years ago. A folded blanket on the couch. A chipped mug on the counter. A flashlight on the shelf. Batteries probably dead. I didn't bother turning on the heat. I turned on the lights, one by one, illuminating the space like a slow reveal. Everything was still here. Mine. Untouched. Safe. I pulled a pad of paper from the drawer, the one with the faded red cover, and set it on the table. Then I wrote the first name. Shannon. She was the one who smiled when I gave her my house key 2 years ago. It's just in case, I'd said. She said she understood. Her smile was too easy. Then came Rachel. Then Marcus. Then the last one. I wrote each name like a ledger entry. No emotion. Just truth. This wasn't going to be a meltdown. I wouldn't beg for an explanation. I wouldn't ask why. They knew what they did. This was going to be clean, cold, and final. No contact. No forgiveness. And absolutely no coming back. It wasn't about rent. I know that now. I kept every receipt, every payment logged, transferred, and documented. I paid early when I could. I covered Shannon's half of the water bill when she said her paycheck was delayed. I stocked the fridge before trips. I took the trash out when no one else would. They didn't throw me out because of money. It started months ago, quietly, a kind of slow freeze that crept into the walls of the house. Shannon, the friend from college who once cried with me through finals and breakups, started answering in one-word replies. Rachel stopped inviting me to movie nights. Marcus would lower his voice when I entered a room, like I'd walked into the end of a joke I wasn't meant to hear. But I ignored it. You tell yourself people are tired, busy. You convince yourself you're imagining it, that you're just being sensitive. That was my mistake, letting it build without confronting the rot beneath it. The first real crack came a few days after I reached the cabin. A former coworker, Janine, called to ask if I was okay. I hadn't told her what happened yet. You didn't tell me you were moving out, she said. Shannon told me you were leaving the house for good. She said it was all mutual. I nearly dropped the phone. What else did she say? Janine hesitated. Just that it was a long time coming. That you didn't want the place anymore. And, that you asked someone to take your room. That was the first time I heard about her. Someone else had moved into my room. Not after a month. Not even after a week. 2 days after I left town. I sat on the cabin floor with the phone pressed to my ear, staring at the old brick fireplace. A chill moved through me, but it wasn't from the cold. This had been planned. The timing was too perfect. My ex, Daniel, had known about the training weeks in advance. I had shown him the itinerary, asked him if he could feed the cat while I was gone. He said yes. Smiled like everything was fine. We had broken up only a few months earlier, but we were trying to stay civil. Now I wondered if that smile meant something else entirely. I pictured them sitting around the kitchen table, laughing as they passed my name across a conversation like a piece of used paper. She'll be gone Thursday. That gives us the weekend to clean her stuff out. I bet she won't even fight it. They didn't just kick me out. They replaced me, and they made sure it looked like I was never there at all. I thought about going back, about walking right up to that front door and pounding on it until someone answered, demanding to know who touched my things, who made the call, who decided I didn't deserve a bed or a key or a single shred of decency. But what would that give me? An apology forced through clenched teeth? A lie rehearsed by cowards? No, that would be letting them define the terms. I wasn't going to give them that. Instead, I started cleaning up the pieces, quietly, without warning. I drove into town the next morning, no plan but with one goal: take myself back, piece by piece. First stop was the bank. I closed the shared account that Marcus and I had set up to split groceries. It wasn't much, but it had my name on it, and I didn't want a cent of mine sitting next to his. The teller didn't ask questions, just smiled and handed me a receipt. Next was the P.O. box. Rachel had insisted we use one for security reasons, but I was the only one who checked it regularly. I opened it one last time and found 3 letters with my name, postmarked days after they'd tossed me out. I left everything else. Let them sort through the junk. Then the utilities. I still had one account linked to the house. Internet and power under my name. The customer service rep tried to sell me a retention deal. I told her I didn't live there anymore, that someone else had taken over. Would you like to report unauthorized use? She asked. I paused, then said, not yet. I waited in my car afterward, the engine off, staring at the digital paper trail on my phone. I was erasing myself from their world, one login at a time. The final piece was the lease. I hadn't read it in months. I'd signed it quickly when Shannon emailed it, too distracted to notice the detail. But when I found my copy in an old inbox and scrolled through, something stopped me cold. A clause. Quiet, buried, but powerful. If any tenant sublets their room without written approval from all other tenants and the landlord, the lease is void. I read it again. Then again. Someone else had moved into my room. I hadn't signed anything, and I damn sure knew the landlord hadn't approved it. He barely responded to repair requests. I printed it, highlighted the line. Then I drove by the house. Not close. Just enough to see the window. A new girl was sitting at my desk, typing, drinking from the mug I left behind. They hadn't just thrown me out. They were making money off my absence. I lifted my phone, zoomed in, and snapped a photo. Not for revenge. Not yet. Just for later. I didn't waste time feeling sorry for myself. The moment I understood what they'd done, I started preparing. It wasn't about rage or revenge. It was about control. And I was going to take it back. I went to a local store and bought a burner phone. Nothing fancy, just something with a simple number I could keep separate. I didn't want them to know anything. No texts, no missed calls, just silence. Then I went to a hardware store. I bought new locks, a set for the front door and the back. I didn't need anyone walking in, whether they were invited or not. I had no intention of going back to the house, but I wasn't taking chances. I had learned that much. The final stop was a surveillance store. I picked out a few small cameras, something I could install discreetly. I didn't want them to know I was watching, just that I was always one step ahead. The plan wasn't to jump into the fray. No, I was going to wait. And in the meantime, I built my quiet war room. The cabin transformed. Maps went up on the wall. I printed photos of everyone involved, faces, names, connections. I scribbled down dates, timelines. I was methodical, moving with precision, like an artist preparing for a masterpiece. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a control center. The walls closed in, but I didn't feel trapped. I felt alive. Once a week, I drove back to town. I never got too close. I didn't need to. I parked a few blocks away, blending in with the neighborhood, pretending to be just another passerby. I wasn't watching them directly. Not yet. But I knew what they were doing. They were still living my life. One night, I parked across the street. The house was alive with light, the windows glowing in the dark. Music floated out the open door, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't my music. Then one of them walked out, wearing my old hoodie. The one I left behind on a rainy day. The one with the ripped sleeve and the stain on the pocket. I didn't feel my heart race. I didn't feel the sting of betrayal. I just smiled. The game had begun. I lit the first match quietly. The electricity account was still in my name. I'd been paying it automatically for months, even after they tossed me out. The online form took 5 minutes to fill out. Effective immediately. No forwarding address. No explanation. Just gone. 2 days later, I filed an anonymous report to the landlord. I attached a copy of the lease and highlighted the clause about unauthorized subletting. A quiet note: you may want to confirm who's actually living there. The original tenant never approved the new one. I hit send and never looked back. The third fire came the next weekend. A complaint filed to the city. Loud noise, constant traffic, parties after midnight. I described the address in precise detail. No exaggeration, just the facts. The city has rules. All I did was point out they were being broken. I didn't go back to watch. I didn't need to. The updates reached me anyway, whispers carried by people who didn't know they were messengers. Shannon's cousin ran into me at the store. She didn't recognize me at first. "Oh, hey, you used to live with Shannon, right?" she asked. "Man, things are crazy at that house right now. No power all week. Rachel's threatening to leave. Marcus missed a shift at work because his alarm didn't go off." I just nodded, pretending not to know anything. What she didn't say, but what I already knew, was that Marcus had been on probation at his job. One more missed day and he was out. They didn't have candles. They hadn't paid the bill because they assumed I still would. They'd replaced me without asking and forgotten I had built the infrastructure they depended on. Now they were scrambling, watching their little system fall apart piece by piece. I imagined the shouting through those thin walls, Rachel blaming Shannon, Shannon blaming Marcus, someone probably asking why I was still on everything if I was so gone. They were cursing my name now, the name they tried to erase, and still I stayed invisible. I didn't want to be seen. I just wanted them to know. I'm not gone. I'm watching, and I'm not done yet. He left a note at my old job, folded, no envelope, just my name written in that familiar, crooked handwriting. The girl at the front desk said, "Some guy dropped it off. Looked like he hadn't slept." Inside, 5 words. "I need to talk. Urgent." No apology. No explanation. Just that low, simmering urgency I knew too well. The kind he only got when he was afraid of being caught. I agreed to meet him. Not out of curiosity, but because I already knew what he was going to say. We picked a diner at the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions and the coffee tastes like burnt paper. He was already sitting in the booth when I walked in. Hoodie pulled tight, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. He waved once, like we were still on speaking terms. I sat down and said nothing. He didn't waste time pretending to care. Just leaned in and said, "Listen, I didn't know they were gonna. I didn't think it'd go that far." I tilted my head. "I thought maybe they'd, move your stuff to the garage. Just while you were gone. Shannon said you were gonna break the lease anyway." He kept talking. Nervous hands. No eye contact. It wasn't my idea. They made it sound like you didn't want to come back. Like you were starting over. I didn't think they'd throw your mattress outside. I let him finish. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the photo. The one of the new girl, sitting in my room, using my desk, wearing the socks I left in the top drawer. I slid it across the table without a word. He stared at it for a long time. His face didn't register guilt. Just fear. Real sharp fear. Like something clicked. "You took this," he whispered. I smiled. Not kind. Not cruel. Just steady. "Thanks for confirming everything," I said, standing. He didn't follow me out. Didn't try to explain. I left him there, in that booth, still staring at the proof. The picture. The thing none of them thought I had. He wasn't sorry. But he was scared. And that was good enough for now. I gave them one last chance. No shouting. No threats. Just a typed letter delivered to their doorstep, sealed in a plain white envelope with no return address. Printed in black ink, clear and cold. "Return any belongings that bear my name within 1 week. After that, I go public. No more chances. No more silence." I didn't sign it. I waited. For 2 days, nothing happened. I imagined their laughter. Shannon smirking. Rachel rolling her eyes. Marcus brushing it off with that stupid shrug he always used when things got too real. But on the 3rd day, something shifted. A bag of winter clothes appeared on the front porch. Folded. Neatly packed. Left out in the open. The same sweater I'd worn on my last birthday was tucked right on top. Then came a second drop. A shoebox filled with notebooks, letters, receipts. My handwriting on every page. They weren't laughing anymore. It trickled in slowly, like guilt turning to nervous compliance. I didn't pick anything up myself. I had someone do it for me, a neighbor who owed me a favor and didn't ask questions. Then one night, a duffel bag showed up. Old, scratched black leather. Mine. The zipper was fraying on the side. Inside were the last pieces, my journals, photo albums, a few keepsakes. A pendant I thought I'd lost. A worn-out birthday card from my mother. All of it stacked neatly, untouched. And at the very bottom, a note, folded once, tucked between the pages of a book I hadn't read in years. We thought you'd never come back. That was all it said. No names. No apology. Just that one sentence, written in someone's handwriting. I couldn't tell whose. It didn't matter. I stared at it for a moment. Then I stepped outside, walked into the clearing behind the cabin, and struck a match. The paper caught quickly. Flames crawled up the edges like they were racing to forget. I let it burn in my hand until it got too close, then dropped it into the fire pit and watched it disappear. I didn't need to read the rest. There was nothing left to explain, nothing left to return. By the end of that week, everything was done. Every account closed. Every utility under my name canceled. My name scrubbed from the lease. Bank notifications redirected. Nothing tied me to that house anymore. No more group bills, no forgotten subscriptions, no friendly reminders left on the fridge. I had erased myself. My things were boxed, cleaned, reclaimed. What hadn't been returned, I no longer cared about. Some of it was probably sold, broken, or stuffed in corners they were too lazy to clean. Let it rot. Let it carry whatever energy they left behind. I didn't need any of it anymore. On a cold Tuesday morning, I drove by the house one last time. Not to stare, not to haunt, just to see it, to let my eyes land on it before I let it vanish forever. It looked smaller than I remembered. The porch railing was cracked, maybe had been for a while, but I'd never noticed. The lawn overgrown, curtains drawn. A takeout container lay by the front steps like someone dropped it mid-argument. And in the middle of the yard, planted into the dirt with two crooked legs, was a white wooden stake. For rent. No phone number. Just the sign leaning slightly like it had been rushed into place. I didn't pull over. I didn't roll down my window. But I slowed long enough to feel it, that shift. That quiet click in my chest that told me I was finally on the other side of it. Later, I heard the landlord had come by unannounced. That someone panicked and tried to lie, said I'd agreed to the sublet. But the paper trail was too clean. My name wasn't there anymore. My lease copy had already been sent in. He kicked them out within the month. I should have felt triumphant, but I didn't. There was no satisfaction in watching people fall into a pit they dug themselves. No rush of victory. Just air, clean, sharp, unfiltered. As I passed the corner where I used to park, I whispered one word to no one. Goodbye. Then I turned the wheel, drove straight, and never looked back. The house sat in stillness, wrapped in a hush that didn't ask for anything. No buzzing phones, no voices behind thin walls, no tension hiding in someone else's silence. Just wind through the trees, the creak of old wood settling, and the quiet breath of a place that expected nothing from me. I spent my mornings pulling weeds from the front patch of dirt, turning the soil by hand. Rows of tomato seeds, herbs in mismatched clay pots. The work was slow, grounding. It reminded me I still existed beyond survival. Inside, I started to arrange the few things I had left. A picture of my mother near the window, an old blanket draped over the chair that faced the woods. Little pieces of my life, placed where no one could touch them. One night, I lit a candle and sat at the table with nothing but the sound of fire cracking in the corner. No music, no clock ticking, no thought of what they were doing now, or who replaced me after the eviction. That part was finished. This didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like clarity, like waking up after months underwater and realizing you've been holding your breath for years. I wasn't checking for updates, wasn't listening for rumors, or waiting for the apology that would never come. I had nothing left to explain, and no interest in forcing anyone to understand. That life, the one they tried to push me out of, was never mine to begin with. I had been fighting for space in a place that only wanted to shrink around me. I see that now. Here, there were no arguments in the hallway. No guilt when I closed my door. No subtle reminders that I was never fully welcome. This space, quiet, stubborn, unshared, finally felt like mine. I didn't need to be seen. I didn't need to be missed. I had room to breathe. Room to grow something that wouldn't be thrown away. And for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving anyone else's choices. I was just living. I know some people might say I overreacted, that maybe I should have talked to them first, or waited for an explanation. But after everything they did, I couldn't. Still, I'm curious. What would you have done in my place? Would you have walked away like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know. And if stories like this speak to you, make sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you won't miss the next one.